It's a lot of work, man. Heads up. Go on, everything. Scott, you alright? Yep. I'm not in your way, am I? You're in my way. You're in my way. Are you alright? Heads up, heads up.
Sure. When we're speaking, speak right into the mics and speak loud. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're here this morning to set the record straight. I'm Matthew Blitt, counsel for Lenny Dykstra. Along here to my left, Michael Brucki, Lenny Dykstra's criminal defense attorney. Standing to Lenny's right is Christopher Karolkowski of Barlow Investigations. There's been a lot of Uber nonsense out there, and we're here today to clear it up. That morning, Lenny Dykstra was the victim, a victim that all of us can become with. You're driving with Uber with exactly what's happened that morning. It's Lenny Dykstra in the back seat of an Uber asked his Uber driver to take a certain route as he's going the wrong way. The driver then began to argue loudly with Lenny, yelling and screaming at him, going ballistic. Lenny asked the driver to pull over and wanted to get out of the car. The driver sped up, locked the doors, and engaged the child locks so that Lenny could not exit the vehicle. The driver sped up, weaving in and out of traffic. Lenny, scared for his life, as every one of us would be, frantically grabs his cell phone, and dials 911. Lenny is swerving back and forth in the cab because the car is going side to side. He loses 911. 911 calls him back twice as Lenny's in the back of the car fearing for his safety. The driver, Lenny, not once called 911. I've handed out to everybody here today copies of the records of Lenny's cell phone records to clearly demonstrate what went on. Lenny was a victim. He was entrapped, false imprisoned, kidnapped, held hostage in the back of an Uber, trying to get out. The police finally come to the scene, and the driver panics and starts screaming, "He tried to kill me." If someone's trying to kill you or threatens to kill you, do you lock them in a car? Or do you open the doors and let them out? He locked the doors and kept them in there, which defies logic. Lenny runs to the cops and says, "Oh, Lenny tried to kill me." With what? His cell phone? Lenny does not own a gun. Lenny does not have a gun. There was no gun on Lenny. The police never found a gun. Lenny willingly gave him everything he had to the police. Says, "Hey, I don't have a gun, check. I was the one imprisoned." It defies law. Everything else defies logic. So much so, I'm here today with Lenny's criminal defense lawyer, Mike Brookie, who's going to also tell you what happened to demonstrate that Lenny was the victim that morning. Mike?
Thank you so much. We, in just a few short days, thanks to the help of our investigator, Chris Karolkowski from Barlow Investigations, former New York City detective, we've been able to set the record straight of what actually happened that night. Lenny Dykstra is a legend, and this legend deserves our attention, deserves to have his story told. You hear every day, Matt Matone, there's problems with Uber. You have an unregulated industry that has no backgrounds, no checks, no licenses. Anybody with a driver's license can be your driver. Well, we found out, as Matt said earlier, Lenny's in the back of his car, calling 911. That's irrefutable evidence. We've handed you all documentation showing you that not once, not but twice, 911 had to call him back because Lenny was unable to finish what he wanted to say to 911 as the driver erratically drove, running red lights, driving in an act of desperation. Once he realized Lenny was on a 911 call, Lenny was the one asking for help. This driver drove to the police station and made up allegations about a gun in an effort to save himself. Now, the charges, and you have it in your packets, we have filed charges for false imprisonment against the driver. Those charges have already been found to have probable cause. They are pending against the driver. We want you all to know that this can happen to each and every one of you. This is a problem that's been going on nationwide, and if it can happen to Lenny Dykstra, it can happen to you. I want you to know that in a few short days, thanks to the help of Barlow Investigations and Chris Karolkowski, we have been able to find out a lot of interesting details about this driver. It really calls into question what they actually do to protect the passenger when they're in an Uber. Think about it. You don't know whose car you're getting into. And in a few short days, Chris here has been able to find out that this individual, the driver of this Uber, had multiple DMV warrants and major infractions. We're talking about DMV warrant status. That's not an easy thing to get. On top of that, we've been able to ascertain that there's a very good possibility that there's an extensive criminal background in this driver. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Chris so he can tell you, as a former New York City detective and the head of Barlow Investigations, and confirm some of these allegations for us. Chris?
Chris, can we get your name?
Yeah.
Your last name?
Sure. It's Chris Karolkowski.
Spell that from
Chris, you gonna spell that for us?
I'm sorry.
Chris has a call. We'll give it to everybody at the end.
Right now, we're in the preliminary stages of our investigation. What we're going to do, what Uber should have did, is really look into and dig into the Uber driver's history, his driving record, his criminal record, and just his basic demeanor. Is this somebody that should have been driving an Uber? Is this somebody that should have been showing up early morning hours, late at night, picking up people, and being responsible for them? So right now, again, we're in the early stages of our investigation, and hopefully in a few days we'll have more information to share.
Chris is a former New York City detective.
Okay, so but what can you tell us? What do you have? What information can you give us?
Right now we know for sure that in the past this driver did have motor vehicle infractions, which led to him having a warrant and a judgment issued against him.
A warrant for what?
DMV infractions.
But what is the warrant for?
DMV infractions.
Guys,
What do you
somebody
have?
up there said, sir, you said
that you had information that he had an extensive criminal background. What is that, and what information do you have about that? You can't just say something like that and leave it hanging. What is it?
Well, the criminal background that we've been able to ascertain, that there have been searches that have come back on this individual as potentially having criminal warrants out of different states, Pennsylvania and Ohio. Now, there's felony charges, and there's an active fugitive investigation out of, I believe it was Pennsylvania. Is that right, Chris?
It was Ohio.
Ohio, I apologize, Ohio. Now that confirmation of this individual's charges and all of that is developing. So we have preliminary knowledge of that, and we'll be able to confirm that for 100% as soon as that information comes back to us. The DMV warrants and the fact that he has multiple motor vehicle infractions, that's irrefutable at this point. The criminal infractions, we have reason to believe that that is an accurate fact. We're waiting for the rest of those records to come back before we can absolutely confirm that.
Were these arrests? Is that why?
It appears that way. We've ordered official records, but again, this has been a very short amount of time that we've had to get this information out, and this is in just a few short days that we've been able to find out. We've just begun digging into this situation.
Now, did you file a complaint with the police?
We have, and that complaint was for false imprisonment of Lenny Dykstra. That complaint, and this is a fact, has been found to have probable cause, and the driver is now facing charges for false imprisonment.
Where?
Yeah, right now it's at the Linden Municipal Court, and potentially to go up to the Union County Superior Court.
The document is in everybody's possession. We just provided you in that package. The bottom line is, that morning, Lenny Dykstra was the victim, and that's the story.
Have you gotten in touch with have you gotten hold of the recordings of those 911 conversations?
Those 911 conversations and recordings have all been ordered, and we're going to get copies of that, but we do have irrefutable evidence, and we provided it in your packet, that the 911 operator has called back to Lenny multiple times. Chris has also been able to confirm for a fact that 911 calls were made from Lenny's phone, and there were no 911 calls. I repeat, not a single 911 call from the driver's phone. What we're saying to you is, if you're a driver, and if the allegation were to be true, that there was a gun that was pointed at you, common sense would dictate that the individual would A, stop or get out of the car, or B, call 911 himself. The fact is, and that's irrefutable, Lenny Dykstra is the only individual in that vehicle that called for help.
Are you disputing the cocaine possession charges?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Wait, what does that mean? There was cocaine or there wasn't cocaine?
We don't know what there was. We know there was a small amount of marijuana. That's all we could confirm.
What was going through your mind when this was happening? You're trying to get this from A to B. Can you just step up?
I mean, look. I mean.
Can you just step up in front of the
Yeah.
mic? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, they don't call me Nails because I'm like, soft. I mean, look. I was literally in fear of my life, and I called 911, and I was screaming that this man is crazy. He's kidnapped me. He's kidnapped me. I said, "What are you doing? What? You're gonna kill me. What are you doing?" And again, you're talking to a guy that has literally planted the flag on Mount Kilimanjaro and slept in the depths of Death Valley. But did I ever imagine I'd be kidnapped by an Uber driver? And by the way, I mean, all I asked him to do is go to the right destination. He went crazy, and again, I literally thought this guy was going to kill me. Okay, and then he locked me in the car. I said, "What are you doing? Let me out! Get me out of there!"
What did he say? Did he say, "No, we're going somewhere else"? We're going to another destination? Did he say very clear?
At this time, we're going to ask Lenny, since these charges are pending against both the driver, it would be inappropriate for Lenny to comment on any more details other than what we can confirm in our complaints. But again, the documentation that we've given you, as far as the complaint that's been filed, that complaint against the Uber driver has been found to have probable cause and is currently actively pending in the court.
None of the charges against Mr. Dykstra have been dropped?
Did he say anything?
As far as I know at this point, that All that information is being investigated. All I know is that Lenny's afraid for his life.
Any of the charges against Mr. Dykstra been dropped?
Not yet,
Not yet.
but they will be.
What conversations have you had with the Linden Police Department or Uber?
Can't comment on that yet.
Why did Lenny have to call back a second time?
Lenny,
Why did,
The 911 operator called him back.
Right. I'm sorry. Why did they have
Right.
to call back? Why did
Because
they hang up?
as he's being thrown around in the car, he lost the phone, dropped the phone on the floor, the call ended. So 911 had to call him back. So if you look on your sheets, the phone number, the 908 number that we provided you is from 911 dispatch to Lenny's cell phone. We actually redacted part of Lenny's number so he doesn't get bombarded with 400,000 calls after this press conference. But thank you very much, everybody.
Police said
Again,
they found marijuana, ecstasy, and cocaine. What's the
all
discrepancy there?
we can find, all we know is that there was a small trace of marijuana.
How do you explain the discrepancy there?
We can't explain any discrepancy. That's for the charges later down the road.
We seek damages against this Uber.
We're going to be seeking damage against the Uber as well. Correct.
We try to change Uber's driving.
We're going to try and engage with Uber to try and come up with some safety protocols that they start to put into place already, and hopefully they would start doing more of an investigation into the drivers before they send them to pick up your family
Do
members.
you think municipalities should also be legislating Uber or regulating it in some way?
That's a good question, and I really think they should. Just like we have yellow cab drivers have to be looked at. Why shouldn't Uber drivers? It's an unregulated industry that should be regulated.
We were talking before this meeting, saying that you have countless yellow cab drivers that are now fighting for their rights and fighting for their livelihood. These individuals have to pay countless amount of money for a medallion. This is not their part-time thing. That's how they feed their families. Do you have an expectation when you get into a yellow cab or a TLC licensed cab? This individual is a professional. They've been checked. They've invested money. They've paid for medallions. You counterbalance that with anyone with a driver's license behind the wheel of any vehicle can now be your next taxi driver. They can be your Uber driver. That's a huge discrepancy. And the more instances that happen like this, the more times that stuff like this happens, and we're hearing it nationwide. And again, if it can happen to Lenny, it can happen to you.
Lenny says the driver it was good. Lenny said that the driver. Sorry. Did Lenny not threaten the driver that he was going to kill him? That's what the story is. That he was going to kill him.
There's no threats from Lenny. Lenny had a cell phone. Is anybody afraid?
No, but a verbal.
Is anybody afraid of a cell phone?
A verbal threat?
Thank you very much, everybody.
You said Lenny's a legend, deserves to be treated better. Did his notoriety have anything to do with how this was handled?
Absolutely not. Quite the contrary.
What was the driver's motive?
What would be the reason?
We believe
That,
the motive.
you got to ask the driver that. I mean, it's funny that.
Going to a different place?
What do you believe the motive was?
We think he didn't feel like driving to Staten Island.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
We don't know what was in the mind of the Uber driver. I think just this morning there was another report out of Colorado about an Uber driver going ballistic when a passenger asked him to go a different way. It happens all the time. It's not something that's new. There's no nuance to this. And quite frankly, I'm scared when my wife calls for an Uber and she has to get into an Uber with my daughter. So regulation, there has to be some regulation of this industry. It's time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Reputation? You think you're trying to advantage? Thank you.